Larry Magid, and this is Doing Tech Right, a podcast from ConnectSafely, where we and our guests speak about parenting, tech, and related topics, along with strategies and policies to make tech safer and more civil. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe and visit us at ConnectSafely.org. I'm really excited to talk with an old friend, Matthew Soeth. I've known Matthew for many years, back when he was with a group called I Can Help, and he was one of ConnectSafely's early partners on Safer Internet Day. We loved working with Matt, and I've watched his career evolve over the years. And now Matt is the head of a Thriving in Games group. That's a great place to be. And I have a lot of questions about games. I'm really interested in how we can encourage people to play games in ways that are helpful, productive, fun, and, by the way, safe. So, Matt, tell us about yourself and about the group.
Yeah, these are all good things. Larry, always great to connect. I know, you were actually one of my first industry contacts coming out of education. We started a nonprofit and it was like, oh, you should talk to Connect Safely. I'm like, all right, who are they?
Yeah.
And the rest
Who are
is
we?
history, as they say, right?
Yeah.
But it's always fun to connect with TIG. Thriving in Games Group is a nonprofit really looking at multiplayer games in the gaming industry and how we can design spaces to not only reduce harm, but make sure players have more fun playing games and
Yeah.
online and sort of developing the skills they need.
I'm glad you said that, because when cars are designed, hopefully they're designed with airbags and seat belts and safety
hmm
equipment, but you don't buy a car to be safe. You buy a car to get somewhere. And by
hmm
the way, it better be safe, because otherwise you might not get to where you're going. And I think the same is true with games. It's important to focus on safety, but it's also important to focus on why people play games. So let's talk for a minute before we get into the safety issues on why should we allow or even encourage young people to play online games.
I mean, ultimately, a lot of them there, it's just fun. So playing whether it's a board game, whether it's a video game, we often want to engage or even almost have like just a shared social experience of something that's fun. Particularly video games are fun for people when you are learning a skill, developing abilities, you're advancing your character. So you're sort of improving in whatever world that you're playing in. And kind of the new one in the last 10 years is the fact that there's a huge social aspect to it. And I mean, it wasn't even that long ago, 5 years, when we were in a full lockdown and everyone was encouraged to get behind a screen to try and keep people healthy. And so we really saw that kind of uptick in these online spaces and social gathering spaces. And we're seeing that now generationally. My nephew's a great example, and my son to a degree. Will often come home from school and then hop on a screen and they'll all go to the same place and start playing the same game, and just kind of hanging out there before they do their homework. So it's just very fascinating to see not only the cultural shift, but then really just the types of play that are happening in sort of these digital playgrounds.
So I'm going to age myself, because my introduction to games as a parent was when my, at the time, 9-year-old son was playing with a Nintendo back in I guess in
hmm
the 90s. And at that point, almost everybody who I knew that was playing video games was a child or
hmm
maybe a teen. That's not true anymore. Now, a lot of my friends, peers, people even my age, and I'm quite a bit older than you are, Matt, are playing video games. So how did it break out of the youth market and into the mainstream?
Yeah, I feel like it always kind of started there. If you look at the evolution of gaming back from like when there was on computer servers up to Atari. It's funny, I was talking to my sister recently and we had an Atari 20, it was a 2600. And I remember she's like, you have no idea how many sleepovers I missed because mom wouldn't stop playing Pac-Man. I'm like, seriously? It was just kind of this thing that I was not aware of as a kid. But we see, I think the average age of a gamer is around 32 right now. And
Mhm.
so we see it kind of across the board in terms of young people, of older adults, younger adults. It just is sort of this thing that's kind of interconnected itself across the spectrum. Even I was reading something recently, New York Times was saying one of their biggest drivers of subscription is their game section of their newspaper.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so it's fascinating to me to see how I think we're all looking for something that's fun, that's engaging, that's potentially has some social qualities to it. And games tend to offer that much more than, we think traditional social where you're consuming content or maybe you're creating something and sharing. There's something about a game that hits something inside of us that we just all kind of resonate and enjoy.
It's funny you say that, because my wife plays Wordle, and
hmm
she does it, one, because it's fun, but two, because it helps her cognition. It keeps her
Yep.
on her toes mentally. And as we age, that's a very important thing, to exercise the mind as well as the body.
Yeah, very much so. And there's so many games like puzzle games and mystery games and other stuff that just your cognitive abilities and as well as just fine motor skills, right? I think when Nintendo came out, I don't know if my dad meant this or not, but it was talked about like, surgeons use Nintendo to work on their fine skills. I'm like, okay. Like I was 10, like I had no concept of what that data meant to me. But what I always kind of hear is those sort of references that's coming up is like hand-eye coordination skills and other stuff seem to be enhanced just by playing video
Yeah.
games.
Well, the military really loves gamers. I've heard that the Army recruits heavily among the gaming community because the skills that you need for gaming are actually the same skills that are used in modern warfare, much of which is now technical, is
Hmm.
computerized, but not all, but a lot of hand-eye coordination and also the other aspect, whether it's any organization, military, civil, work, cooperation, the ability to
Hmm.
collaborate with other people, which is a big part of gaming. And a lot of parents forget that, or a lot of adults forget that when their kids are playing video games, interactive games, they actually are working with teammates or opponents
Hmm.
in ways that can be very socially rewarding.
Well, that's one of the fascinating areas we've been diving into. Particularly, esports is one example. I've been working with the high school association in the state of Colorado, and one of the things we learned from that group is number one is you get young kids will do esports, teenagers, 14 to 18, will do esports, will not play a traditional sport. Or you'll get particularly neurodivergent kids who historically are very non-social, have low social skills, want to play video games and might play in isolation at their home, but will be willing to join an esports team and learn how to participate in a team activity. So the amount of transferable skills, ability to develop resilience, to overcome hardship, to deal with negative interactions online, to work as part of a team, all of those can be enhanced or evolved within an esports environment the same way you would if you played baseball or basketball or you're a part of a band, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, whatever it could be. There's a lot of those social emotional skills, like physical skills, just the connection with other humans that can happen in the space as we learn to kind of interact and set boundaries and create roles for ourselves.
You mentioned baseball, and when I think about youth sports, my kids were active in soccer. And in addition to respecting and interacting with their teammates, there was a lot of effort to make sure that they also respected their opponents, that they played by the
Yeah.
rules, they treated people respectfully. Well, in the gaming world, I don't know how true that is. I mean, I'm not a gamer, so I don't have a lot of personal experience, but I do know, for example, our podcast producer Vu Lee was involved in the Gamergate issue, not as a
Mm-hmm.
perpetrator, but as somebody who was working with survivors of Gamergate. And we do know of many situations where there has been harassment and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, sometimes there's kind of friendly bantering that could be perceived as
Mm-hmm.
hostile, but often isn't, and true harassment, true cruelty. And how that happens and how we deal with that.
Yeah, it's a good. I'm actually, you got me thinking because I'm like, I don't know if Vu can do anything mean. Like, it's
No,
like the
Vu's
nicest guy
not,
in the
yeah,
world.
absolutely.
No, I mean that's where I think design becomes important because you've been in the space a while. So much of trust and safety has been bolted on after the fact, right? It's a
Yeah.
reaction to things that are happening, and it's important to have like we need guardrails, you need moderation, we know that reducing harms online has a positive impact overall, and that's a huge misconception of moderation as we see it from a political conversation standpoint. That part aside, when we look at designing games and try and give you some examples, so within the game itself, there are things within the environment that often might create that competition. So Overwatch is a great example. So within Overwatch, you have the ability to set up sort of your personal settings. So hypothetical, let's say I have a young kid, I just put down that baby for a nap. I want to play a game, but I don't want to use voice chat because if I use voice chat in the game, I'm probably going to wake my kid up and I'm going to get less gaming time, which is not what I want. So in my settings, I'll put in there that I only want to be matched up in groups that use text chat versus voice chat. Now, if I'm another player and I only want to use voice chat and I get paired with someone who only wants to use text chat, that's going to create friction. That friction is going to lead to conflict. And then that's when all the negative behavior is going to happen. We didn't finish this quest. It's your fault. No, it's your fault. That's just bad player matching. So giving players some autonomy over how they want to interact with other players, how they want to experience the game, like this one level of consideration we think about design. The other aspect to it is then how do we teach players to play proactively? So another game, an example would be start a new game. I'm matched up with someone never met before, virtual or otherwise, and we have to go through experience. So very quickly, we're going to put them in an environment where they have to overcome some obstacle, but they have to work together to do it. And after they work together to complete that obstacle, then it gives them the ability. Let's say you get hurt in that quest. You can't heal yourself, but the other player can heal you. And as a result, you sort of get sort of this internal reward, almost like an intrinsic reward, like you get with helping someone in real life. And that's another sort of aha moment is one is you're showing people how like, oh, I can heal other players. Like that feels good. We want the things that we see in real life, such as helping others gives us an intrinsic reward feeling is way different than helping others. Oh, I got a loot box because I helped this person. Like
Yeah.
that feeling is much more short-lived. It doesn't sustain as long, and it's certainly not sustainable within the game. So trying to think through ways in which we can evolve that. Other stuff you've seen, Helldivers 2, very popular lately, where when it crossed over from PlayStation Xbox, where we saw players from that PlayStation world assisting new players coming in. Like, so you can summon a hero on a quest. So if you're having trouble being a boss, you can summon a more experienced player. They can help you beat that level or give you guidance on how to defeat it and level up your character that much more quickly. And what the players realize is they level up their own skills, they're able to defeat higher and higher challenges, more difficult challenges together
Mhm.
than they could ever do on their own, which means you have more resources left over, you have less loss of life, and you can do more in the game as a whole.
Moving for a moment from digital games to a very analog game, one of the things that interested me about the Super Bowl was
Mhm.
certainly not the game. I'm not a big football fan. Maybe the commercials. The halftime was interesting, but what really warmed my heart was after the game when the losing coach shook the hand of the winning coach, and players from the opposing teams hugged each other on the field after
Mhm.
this very hard-fought game was over. And it really made me feel good to
Mhm.
see this happening. And to what extent does that happen in digital games where you're up against an opponent in often a very, not only a very tough game, but a game that actually may have simulated violence? As a matter of fact, you're actually maybe literally trying to virtually kill
Mhm.
this opponent. You're not literally trying to. Is that a
Yeah.
contradiction? Literally trying to virtually kill?
Figuratively, virtually, yeah.
Yeah, whatever. I mean,
I
they
love
do
it.
survive it, but yes.
Yeah, yeah. No, I follow you. No, I think yeah, you and I can talk language all day. It's one of my favorite things I remember talking to you with. No, but that and it's a great point. I think it happens more than we think. Obviously, esports tournaments, it's much more straight across because you're in the same room as a person, right? In
Mm,
theory, so that's much more visible. And in other games, I think one of the things that gets missed is like that's a learned skill. Like we're all as we play these games, we all have to learn to deal with frustration. We know we're not going to win every game. I feel pretty fortunate. Like I played basketball through college and got to be in some really competitive environments. And there are some games you get outplayed and it sucks and it's terrible and there's nothing to be mad about. And then there's other games where you lose and you're like, man, those two plays, like if I just done these two things different, like we could have won. And that sucks and it's terrible, but you get better. Games can have those same learning opportunities to where when you lose a match, if you've developed the skills or abilities to reflect on your gameplay, to understand what your opponent is doing, particularly in 1v1 type situations, those environments tend to be sort of the most toxic, for lack of a better word, because again, it's highly competitive. But the flip side of that is then really understanding, if you're a parent of a kid, is like, how do you deal when you're in a situation and you lose and it's just a better player? Even more so, how do you handle it when you know the other person is cheating, breaking the rules? Like my son likes to bring that up quite a bit on certain games. He's like, they're a hacker. And I don't know if he's just being overly sarcastic and then you watch the game, you're like, oh no, they are doing something funny. Like there's something weird going on.
yeah.
So it's trying, I think there's all those factors just become life moments, become learning moments of trying to understand that. Very different than, say, a targeted bad actor. So, kind of a standard rule is like 80% of problems are caused by 5% of users.
Yeah.
So, this 5% is showing up and they're intentionally trying to disrupt and they're intentionally trying to ruin the experiences for other players. Like that group is much more easier to identify when something's going on. For everyone else, what we're trying to look at from a game standpoint is like, do they have a bad day? Was it a rough match? Did they lose something in the process? They obviously care about it. I think having a kid in the space and seeing his a very emotional reaction sometimes to whether he loses a bunch of loot because of a quest and he just died at the wrong point or something else, and that sort of online social identity is so important to him and trying to be successful in there. Seeing that, you start to understand sort of the emotional investment, just like we have in a sports team or anything else. But yeah, in terms of shaking hands and other stuff like that, that's something that needs to be taught. There's no physical, there really isn't any empirical evidence to show that playing these games like makes you want to hate people or do negative stuff online.
Yeah.
But within that, again, I think people need to understand like this is like saying, hey, congrats or good job. That's something we got to teach.
Yeah, and of course, the game wouldn't be very much fun if you didn't have an opponent. So those opponents are
Exactly.
part of the joy.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk over the years about gore and violence in video games. In fact,
Mhm.
California actually many years ago passed a law putting age restrictions on games. I think it got overturned by the Supreme Court. But let's talk about gore and violence. How much of a issue is it? How much of a problem is it? Is it overstated? Where do you stand on that issue?
No, for me, I can tell you as a parent, the conversation we have with our son. So he's 12 years old for context. Is just, is it animated violence or is it like more realistic violence?
Mhm.
And that's something we've tried to kind of keep a line at in terms of like what age is he at. Obviously, the SRB has rating systems that delineates a lot of the stuff
ESRB
globally.
is the Entertainment Software Rating Board, right?
That's
Yeah,
correct.
yeah, and they've got a.
Um,
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah,
No, that's thank you for sharing that. There's way too many acronyms in this space.
yeah.
But so it's like that's what we try to do as parents in terms of being overstated. Again, back to the research, like Rachel Cowart has published a lot of stuff on this. Like she's very smart on this. Again, there's no connection between anything with extreme violence and offline violence and people repeating. Like when I was a kid, it was don't watch MTV or Beavis and Butthead. I remember as a kid, I was told not to watch He-Man because the monsters would give me nightmares.
Hmm.
I don't know if that was true or not, but I remember my mom saying that on multiple occasions. And so I think trying to show that disconnect, then it comes back to, are we having conversations? Do we understand behavior? Are there other indicators, such like for my son, like, are his grades slipping? Is he not sleeping at night? Is he moodier than normal? Is he losing friends? Is he disconnecting from the world? Like those are the kind of things I'm looking at as a parent to try and understand his perception. And the research kind of supports a lot of that. Is just understanding is why people are playing these games, what type of violence, and then does that violence part of a bigger sort of behavioral issue this individual's having?
Yeah, and of course, whenever there's a tragic mass killing, and it's
It's the first
revealed that,
thing.
the killer
Yeah.
was a game player, we tend
Yep.
to think, "Oh my God, that's a relationship." But then, how many people who have gotten scholarships to great universities have
Hmm.
gone on to win Nobel prizes, have been done great things, are also game players.
But I mean, to your point, like we all want the one thing that's a problem.
Mhm.
Right. When something goes wrong, we're all looking for like, oh, it must be this. Like with online safety for a long time is like, we got AI and it's like AI is going to take care of the moderation. Like, no, AI is not going to do that.
And
But we
now,
all,
we're worried about AI. Yeah,
right? It's gone the other way.
AI needs to be moderated, right?
But yeah, no, 100%. And so then it's like, okay, what is that always gets the first headline. Correct. We don't talk about the other stuff. I did a great interview a while ago with Robin Henderson, and she was the chief executive behavioral psychology at Providence Health, which is like the third largest hospital network in the US. And one of the things we talked about is there's all these other indicators to show us when someone is struggling with some type of mental health crisis. And so much of that data often gets missed. A lot of times, like particularly if it's a mental health challenge and people are playing games, they're often playing games to escape or cope or deal with stress. And then that depression can sort of push them to want to do or play more in these environments, to engage in these specific chat
Mhm.
rooms or whatever it could be. So I think really trying to get to the root of behavior. What are the other indicators with gaming itself? Like if people are dealing with severe depression or others, we see sort of that retreat into online spaces
Yeah.
in order to cope and manage.
And this is the classic mistake that many people make, which is to confuse correlation and causation. So
Yep.
you have two things that are correlated, and you assume one thing causes another, but actually maybe the other thing causes the thing, or they have, or they simply correlated for a variety of reasons. A famous case in I think it was in San Diego, where people who would eat an ice cream were coming down with this horrible disease or a horrible condition, and it was presumed that it was the ice cream was causing it, but it turned out it was caused by hot weather, which causes people to eat ice cream. So it
Yeah.
had nothing. The ice cream, it was coincidental. They correlated, but there was no causation. Let's talk about another stereotype, which is the lonely. I have this image that's constantly reinforced in TV shows and movies about some guy sitting in his basement eating junk food and drinking massive amounts of sugary sodas and God knows what else. Is there anything to that stereotype? Obviously, we know that lots of people play games in all walks of life, but
Mhm.
why is that stereotype even out there?
I think it's just easier to understand and package. Saying so my son will absolutely tell you he's a gamer. Like he's convinced. I know he's esports is on his horizon. It's just what he wants to do. He's a single sport kid. He does jujitsu and other stuff, and that like it totally fits his jam. My daughter's more of a team sport kid, and she will play games almost as much as my son, but she's absolutely convinced she's not a gamer.
Mhm.
And so, kind of that self identity, particularly the negative stereotype, to me is really part of sort of this moral panic of like games are bad.
There is some evidence about problematic gaming use. I mean, Korea, for
Hmm.
example, has had programs in place to deal with what they, I don't know if they call it gaming addiction, but certainly overuse of gaming. So, what about that tendency for some people to get so wrapped up in gaming that they are missing out on other aspects of life?
Yeah, so a lot for that one, I tend to lean on Dr. Michael Rich from
Mm.
Boston Children's Hospital. I know he's talked about that a lot. That's one of the things, one of the words I think that does get overused a lot is when we talk about addiction or gaming addiction, and it kind of limits versus I just play many hours. I think to your scenario, it's just more the social perception. Again, I would come back to what is causing them to want to spend that much time in the basement. Whether if it's problem gaming, if you're playing 9 to 10 hours a day. When I was in college, and I know I had more than a few binge sessions on Final Fantasy VII, and because I just had finals were done, I had nothing else to do, and I'm just like, I just want to play games, right? But to see if it's something that's consistent and goes over a long period of time, to me, that would usually indicate that there's some other bigger challenges that this person is struggling with, and not wanting to deal with in that time. In my English major, non-mental health degree perception.
Yeah. Well, if it'll make you feel any better, I'm not don't have any gaming problems issues, but last night I was watching Shrinking on Apple TV, and they every episode they hook you into wanting to watch the next episode. They always this is true with all serial television shows. They always end on some kind of a hook, and so you want to watch the next one. And I can think of many nights when I've stayed up well past my bedtime
Hmm.
because I couldn't pull myself away from the television. So it's not just gaming. I mentioned Gamergate. You mentioned you have a daughter who plays games. Let's
Hmm.
talk about misogyny and
Hmm.
how women and girls are sometimes impacted
Hmm.
by men who aren't behaving themselves online. How much of an issue is that? I hear a lot about it, but
Hmm.
I don't know how common it really is and what can be done about it.
It is a major challenge still within games. Like, we're still seeing a lot of the same challenges within games. Disproportionately, I know women who work in gaming are more likely to be targeted by individuals, particularly if you change a feature or a play style. Talked to more than a few game employees who've had to explain to executives what it's like to be a female in gaming. There's just a sort of a lack of understanding. Again, if you don't go through it, how do you understand it exists? So there's a lot of intentional effort, I think, around education groups, orgs, and within games themselves. That's potentially, I think, why a lot of these games appeal to so many people because, well, yes, it is a challenge. I could go into Arc Raiders, Overwatch, Helldivers, and I don't have to be a gender unless I want to. I don't have to be an identity. I can sort of assume this role of a character and sort of be who I think I want to be, and sort of role play in that experience and just have a good time. And
Hmm.
so trying to understand, I think a lot of the socios exist in that place. Again, that's going to come back to design parameters, and how much choice we can give individuals. It's going to come back to moderation policies and principles and how platforms are choosing to enforce that. And a lot of that environment, and again, will start to drive behavior. And so understanding how policy gets enforced consistently across that, and then how well individual communities can self-regulate. So the idea behind pro-social, one of the aspects is you develop healthier communities. The community itself will start to self-regulate. And so Arc Raiders made some news a while ago because they started segmenting the loading screens and determining which server players went to based upon like the ratings or how toxic they were, or negative to other players, things like that. And one of the challenges of that, if you put a bunch of people, essentially like a prisoner's island, who exhibit negative behavior, that behavior then becomes the norm.
Hmm.
But if you can
Yeah.
start to players up in environments who do not acknowledge that type of behavior, or who can encourage others not to engage in that type of behavior, we start to see it as a whole decrease. It doesn't go away. But if you can start to decrease it or self correct that environment, then your moderation tools and others have less strain, and it makes it easier for them to respond to what's going on.
So we have to wrap up soon, but I want to get some practical advice for parents who are just concerned about their kids playing games, parents who have a good reason to be concerned because they're
Mhm.
observing something in their child or their teen that they think might be related to gaming problems.
Mhm.
What do you're a parent yourself? I mean, what do you do, and what do you advise other parents to do to make sure your kids are getting as positive an experience as possible and minimizing some of the negative potential experiences?
Yeah, I think I'm in a space where there's a danger, and I'm sure you were too, of just knowing too much. Like I remember a few years ago when I was working at TikTok, and we deployed this new young user program, and my daughter was in there, and I was trying to explain to her at 11 why she could not have TikTok, and she's just like crying, and she's like, "You're ruining
Mhm.
my life with trust and safety."
Oh God, my
And
kids gave me the same problem. They picked the wrong parent. Exactly.
I'm like, I'm sorry, it's my job.
Yeah.
But no, I think for both my kids is we trying to have regular conversations. Like I have noticed if there's any downtime, there's a propensity to want to go to a screen. And
Mhm.
so we'll try to have those conversations about it as just reinforcing and it's work. And I'm certainly guilty of this too,
So
just
in other
because
words, you look up from your phone and say, "Kids, put your phone away."
100%.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
And
Yeah, I'm not picking on you. I mean, we all do that.
oh, I'm totally guilty. Like I
Yeah,
can't hide from that one. Yeah.
yeah.
But no, so we try to have those moments, or we'll try to do what I would call like shared screen moments. We'll watch a movie together, or we'll play
Mhm.
a game together. I'll often like I'll play with my son. There's a handful of games that we can play. I've noticed he prefers to play games that he's better at than me, which is totally typical of his age. But it that becomes a social interaction, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
so I'm consistently trying to seek out like what are you seeing online? Who are you talking to? Just kind of casual where it makes sense of what type of stuff is happening. So like when there were major incidents this past year, there was the Charlie Kirk shooting
Yeah.
or other stuff, talk to my daughter like, hey, did something come up? Did anyone say anything at school? Are you seeing anything online? How did you feel about that? And she's still pretty forthcoming about it, but just me trying to be aware, me trying to have the conversation, communicate, definitely setting limits. We've had a few times just you take the device away because hey, I see some missing assignments this week, and trying to hold them accountable and understanding. With my son, it's more about balancing activities. So it's like, no, you can play your game, but here are the things we need to do today that don't involve a screen, and then you can have more screen time. And hopefully, over time, by the time he hits 30, it will help him to kind of set some of those internal boundaries because developmentally, he just doesn't have that skill set right now.
You just raised a really important point. I always like to say, we're not raising children, we're raising adults, because you're only a
Hmm.
child for 18 years. And in fact, you can debate whether you're really a child when you're a teenager, but you're a minor
Yeah,
for 18 years.
yeah,
With any luck, you're going to be an adult for many, many decades.
that's the
And
goal.
it's to prepare them for that as well as get them through childhood.
Yeah, and that was years ago. Even when I was teaching, back when I first met you, that was the advice I'd give. Is I'm teaching high school kids. I had very tiny kids at that moment, and was often getting asked for parenting advice. And I said, well, here's the deal: like when your kids leave home, like right now, my daughter's a teenager, and if she goes to a sleepover or a school event, whatever it is, like I all I can do is hope she's going to make the right decision, and if she
Right.
needs help, she's going to reach out. And
Right.
I think well, we're all hoping that our kids at some point will make the right decision, and if they screw up, we're there to help them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And by the way, as a parent, my children are now adults. It doesn't go away.
Yeah.
I mean, you still worry about your kids, and again,
Mhm.
you reap the rewards of having raised them well. Any other advice, including for parents who, unlike you, actually have some really good reason to be concerned? Because they're seeing something that is very disturbing.
Yeah, and I just ask questions. Like I have a few friends I always talk to, like, "Hey, what are your kids doing online?" Ask your kids what they're doing online. There are a lot of resources. I know, like Connect Safely, you publish a bunch of parent guides.
Yeah,
Almost every game and social platform has some type of resource. You can always ask medical professionals and others. As a parent, I think we greatly undervalue our experience as humans.
mhm,
And so we've all had good relationships, bad relationships, breakups, good days, bad days. So having conversations with your kids, understanding it's okay to set limits. If they throw a tantrum because you take the screen away, the world is not going to end. Just because they're quiet doesn't mean everything's okay. And
yeah.
so being able to have those conversations and be present as much as possible. When you know something's wrong, something's probably wrong, and just have the conversation and reach out to those who you know can help.
Now, Matthew, I heard a rumor that you're doing a podcast. Is that true?
I am doing a
Yeah, well,
podcast.
let's take advantage of the opportunity to plug it. Tell me about it. Tell us
No, I
about it.
appreciate that. So yeah, safety is redacted. So
Ooh,
we're one of my third, I think 39 episodes now,
wow.
and have safety experts from across the professional sphere. Actually, we should have you on there. We'll do another cross episode.
That would be fun.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, Matt, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope to stay in touch. And I would enjoy being on your podcast one of these days.
yeah. No, let's make it happen. Thanks for having me, Larry. This is a blast.
Take care. Doing Tech Right is produced by Christopher Lee. Maureen Cochan is executive producer. Theme music by Will Magid. I'm Larry Magid.